Whether spies, whistleblowers, or informants, those who deal with secrets can often put their lives at risk to make sure people know the information they have uncovered. Some manage to escape with their lives, only to disappear without a trace afterwards, and others aren't so lucky. Number 10. Oleg Bitov was a Soviet defector who made headlines in the West in the 1980s. He provided a unique insight into what life was like in the Soviet Union, but it's likely that most of the secrets he told in his life were those that the West would have preferred to keep secret. Bitov was a writer who worked as the foreign culture editor for the Soviet Literary Gazette. In 1983, he was one of many foreign journalists invited to the Venice Film Festival. According to Bitov, he was 75% certain about what he was going to do when he arrived in Venice, but there was still some doubt in his mind. That doubt was shaken away on September 1st, when Soviet forces took down a civilian Korean plane that had strayed into their airspace. 8 days later, he made his way to the British consulate and asked for political asylum. He was first taken to Rome, then transported to Britain on a fake passport. He was put up in a safe house and put in contact with British journalists who were keen to take up his story. According to the journalist involved in editing Bitov's work, he wasn't particularly interesting. He was a culture editor and didn't have any secrets to share about the inner workings of the Soviet government. But any defection from the USSR created interest in the West, and a number of articles about censorship were published. He was billed as a man from the Ministry of Truth, playing on the fact that by this point, the year was 1984. Despite not providing any groundbreaking secrets, Bitov's articles attracted international attention, and he was invited to the United States. He earned a book deal to write more about his experiences, and in just a year had earned tens of thousands of dollars. But on August 10th, Bitov suddenly disappeared. The day before had been a typical day for him. He'd gone to visit an acquaintance and talked with other Russian immigrants. He'd agreed to loan the man money and was happy for that money to be paid back directly to his wife, who was still living in the Soviet Union. On the 16th, he had a meeting with his MI5 handler in Kensington, not far from the Soviet embassy. He was supposed to contact his friend about the money later that day, but it never came. Bitov's friends and MI handlers soon realized he was missing. The British government tried to keep this secret, but just a month later, the news broke in Moscow. Bitov appeared in a press conference where he claimed he'd been kidnapped by the British Secret Services and was forced to release articles that would damage the Soviet Union. In this statement, he revealed the names and contact information of members of the intelligence services. It seemed that everything about his extraction from Italy and vetting by MI5 had been revealed to authorities in Moscow. The British government disputed these accusations. He'd come to Britain willingly, but had seemingly been convinced to return to the USSR. Some theorized he was blackmailed or kidnapped to prevent any other secrets from being leaked. One suggestion was that he knew about an attack on the Pope that linked the attacker to the CIA. The journalist who'd worked with Bitov had another theory, that he'd simply overestimated the amount of work that he was taking on and had fled back to Russia to avoid this. After returning to the USSR, Bitov returned to obscurity. Number 9. Babita Deokaran had just dropped her daughter off at school when she was approached by a group of men outside her home. They opened fire on her, taking her life in a targeted attack that shocked South Africa. This wasn't just another random act of violence. Someone had wanted to take Babita out after she'd blown the whistle on corruption that cost hospitals hundreds of thousands of rand. Babita had joined the Gauteng Province Health Department 15 years before the violent attack. She began working as a clerk before rising to eventually becoming the chief director of financial accounting. Her position gave her knowledge of the various payments the hospitals were making to government contractors. These contractors were supposed to be providing medical equipment or items of personal protection, like gowns and gloves. For the most part, there was nothing out of the ordinary about the transactions that crossed over Babita's desk. But a disturbing amount of the receipts seemed to indicate there was something else going on. For years, Babita had been helping the authorities deal with fraud and corruption. But in 2020, the corruption seemed to become even more prominent. Hospitals were trying to purchase ventilators and PPE to help cope with the pandemic. But at some hospitals, the companies getting these contracts were ones that had no history in supplying these items. They were also paying far more for them than was normal. Other purchases that raised concerns were things like hundreds of thousands of rand for children's jeans, items the hospital definitely didn't need. Babita had alerted her boss to the transactions and stopped the payments from going through. She knew this was something serious, though. The extent of the fraud suggested this wasn't just a small group of people acting independently. In mid-August 2021, Babita sent another message to her boss. It read, "I'm worried that the guys in Tembisa are going to realize we're not releasing their payments and know that we're onto something. Our lives could be in danger." Her boss tried to assure Babita that she was chasing the investigation to make sure something happened about the corruption that she discovered. At the time, though, no such actions were taking place. 12 days later, on August 23rd, Babita's prediction came true. The day had started completely normally. Babita sent her normal good morning message to the family group chat. They had no idea her life was in danger. She hadn't told them about the secrets she had uncovered, possibly to try to protect them from the dangerous people who would soon take her life. She dropped off her teenage daughter at school and had just returned home when the attack happened. Across South Africa, people were horrified by the attack. They were also disturbed by just how little protection Babita had received. She was the first whistleblower to have lost her life after trying to do what was right. People called for more to be done to protect people like Babita in the future, and she was hailed as a hero. Number 8. Cemil Onal warned the Dutch authorities that his life was in danger. This didn't stop someone from carrying out the threat and attacking him. The individual responsible is still a mystery, but if Onal was right, it had something to do with the secrets he knew and shared shortly before he passed. Onal was a Turkish national whose name first started to appear in the media after a violent attack on his former boss. For years, he'd worked as head of finance for Halil Valyali. Valyali was a much more well-known figure. The Turkish Cypriot businessman was often seen at important events alongside political figures. On social media, he showed off his extravagant lifestyle, which included riding dune buggies and keeping his own personal caviar farm. He made his money through various business ventures, including 5-star hotels and casinos in northern Cyprus. There were some allegations of illegal activity involving illegal substances and gambling. One prominent Turkish politician even claimed Valyali threatened his child, but Valyali managed to avoid any serious trouble. That came to an end in February of 2022. Valyali's car was attacked as he was being driven around northern Cyprus. His driver was struck by bullets and passed away at the scene. Valyali was rushed to a nearby hospital, but his life could not be saved. When the police began the investigation into the attack, another investigation began. This one surrounded Valyali's business dealings, specifically illegal gambling sites. Gambling is extremely restricted in Turkey, with all non-state online gambling sites banned. Valyali's companies had managed to find ways around this. They also offered services in other countries where gambling was restricted. As head of finance, Onal knew about this illegal activity. He'd left the operation in 2021, but he already knew of Valyali's most nefarious dealings, including those involving government officials. But when Turkey issued an arrest warrant for Onal, it wasn't concerning his role in the gambling business. They claimed he was responsible for the attack on Valyali. Onal was arrested in the Netherlands, but argued he had nothing to do with this crime. He'd been targeted because of what he knew about the gambling business and bribes against government officials. While in prison in the Netherlands, he spoke extensively to journalists. He told them how the illegal business worked, including how the money was moved through cryptocurrency and hundreds of bank accounts. But the most damaging secret he knew was about the bribes. According to Onal, he would pay sponsorship money to important government officials to make sure they didn't interfere with Valyali's business. It was believed that the sudden crackdown against Valyali's successors was designed to threaten them and make sure those bribes or sponsorship payments continued to be made. These were only allegations, and it couldn't be confirmed if what he was saying was actually true. But he was eventually released from prison in the Netherlands as investigations continued. It's not known for certain if Onal was attacked because of the secrets that he'd shared, or any of the other secrets he may have taken to his grave. And that mystery may only be solved once the person responsible is in custody. Number 7. Henri Dericourt was one of the most controversial espionage figures of the Second World War. Even decades after his passing, it's still unclear where exactly his allegiances lie, and it's possible that the answer may never be found. What is known is that he shared secrets with somebody, and the end of his life is shrouded in almost as much mystery as his wartime efforts. Dericourt was a French airman who worked as a civilian pilot before the start of the war. When the war broke out, his work changed from delivering mail to delivering supplies to French forces near the front lines. But after France fell to German forces, he briefly returned to civilian work in France. Before the outbreak of war, he'd made friends with at least one German police officer, who later went on to earn a prominent position in the German intelligence agency. But Dericourt also had contacts in Britain, including Nicholas Boddington, an important member of the intelligence services there. He apparently grew closer to his German friend after the surrender of France, but seemingly changed allegiances in August of 1942. Dericourt and another French pilot made their way to Britain, where they offered their services to the Allied war effort. Dericourt was interrogated closely. The French agencies operating in Britain and MI5 seemed uncertain about his loyalties. Despite the reservations of other agencies, Dericourt was accepted into the Special Operations Executive. The SOE was designed to help resistance movements in Europe. It also happened to be the group that Boddington worked for. Dericourt was parachuted back to France and tasked with finding airfields and arranging flights for other agents. It was an incredibly important job, with the lives of many agents in his hands. Over the next year, there were some problems with the SOE. Many agents were captured, and it became clear that there was someone inside the organization leaking information to the Germans. Dericourt was a prime suspect. It could never be clearly established if he was actually the person responsible. It seemed likely he'd been passing on secrets, costing the lives of many brave spies. But there were also opportunities to leak important information that were apparently not taken. By this point, Boddington had a high bounty placed against him by German forces, but he was able to take flights arranged by Dericourt without any harm coming to him. After the war, another theory was put forward. This claimed that another British intelligence agency had willingly sacrificed the SOE. Espionage in the Second World War included a lot of disinformation, especially concerning the time and place of the Allied D-Day landings in France. Members of the SOE were told the incorrect time and place, the same one that British intelligence wanted the Germans to believe was correct. This made sure the real plans didn't get discovered if any SOE members were captured, but some believed that it was spread so that SOE members could be deliberately given to German forces and provide false information. This theory suggests that Dericourt was actually a triple agent. There was not enough evidence to find Dericourt guilty of working for the enemy. After the war, he returned to civilian pilot duties, flying for Air Laos. This job was believed to be transporting illegal substances more than any legitimate cargo. On November 21, 1962, Dericourt took off from an airfield in Laos. He crashed just short of the landing strip in Sayaburi. His body was never found, and officially he lost his life in the accident, but some theorists suggested he escaped and went into hiding. Whatever the case, Dericourt likely took the secret of his true allegiance to his grave. Number 6. In September of 2010, the phone hacking scandal at British tabloids gained attention, largely due to former entertainment journalist Sean Hoare, one of the first whistleblowers. Less than a year later, he passed away, leading to a lot of speculation. Hoare had worked for Rupert Murdoch's papers, including The Sun and News of the World. He described intense pressure to secure scoops, which led to illegal and risky behavior, including partying and using illegal substances with celebrities, a practice that severely damaged his health, eventually leading to his firing. The most widespread dark art was phone hacking. Journalists accessed voicemails by guessing default pins. Other illegal practices included accessing phone records and texts. Victims ranged from royal family members, which led to a limited earlier inquiry, and to crime victims and politicians. Hoare's 2010 public allegations reignited the scandal, which resulted in a major inquiry, arrests, prison sentences, and eventually the closure of News of the World. Shortly after a New York Times interview, Hoare was found passed away in his home. While many immediately suspected foul play, an inquiry concluded that he passed away from severe liver damage, a direct consequence of his job and a return to alcohol under the scandal's pressure. Number 5. In 2019, Basel Mustafa Assi returned to his home for the first time in 15 years. He'd spent that time in hiding after revealing secrets that put over a dozen people in prison. Unfortunately, Assi would never leave the town alive again. Assi was around 32 years old when he was first arrested in 2005. His crime was extortion. For years, he'd been a member of the powerful Ayat Hariri crime family. The family was one of many that operated in Israel's criminal underworld. The fights between the various criminal organizations had led to hundreds of people losing their lives over the years, including women and children. Assi was known as an enforcer, but exactly how high up in the organization he stood, that's not publicly known. Assi could have faced years or even decades in prison. Rather than serve his time, he contacted the authorities with a deal. He would turn state's witness and go undercover among his former allies. All he wanted was the investigations against him to be abandoned. A lump sum of $150,000 and a salary for the time that he was working with the police. It was a deal the authorities took. In September of 2005, over a dozen members of the Ayat Hariri crime family were arrested. Assi testified for 4 months, revealing secrets about the criminal organization and providing evidence for various crimes, which included racketeering and the sale of illegal substances. In 2007, 15 men were convicted for their crimes, in large part due to Assi's testimony. Assi would later call it revenge, as he allegedly felt betrayed by the gang's leaders. The result was a huge coup for the police, who claimed that the gang had been wiped out. Assi was apparently not so certain of this. He fled the country and lived in hiding for 15 years. In a recent article about the various criminal organizations in Israel, the Hariri family was named. They still had around 200 foot soldiers at their command. In 2011, Assi sent videos to some of the lawyers who defended the gang members he helped send to prison. He wanted to clear his conscience. Even though this had been his revenge, he claimed the police had used the vengeance against him. He also claimed the police told him he could commit whatever crimes he wanted while he worked for them, as long as he didn't commit them on camera. These lawyers tried to use this as evidence to appeal the convictions against Assi's former allies, but with no success. In 2019, Assi seemingly felt the dust had settled enough for him to return to Kafr Bara, a village in central Israel. He was visiting relatives. At about 8:30 p.m. on September 13th, someone opened fire on the car Assi was in. He was struck by several bullets and rushed to a local hospital, but there was little that could be done and he passed away from his wounds. After the initial reports of the violent crime, there was little follow-up in Assi's case. According to later reports on gang violence in Israel, it wasn't unlikely for cases such as this to go unsolved. Many people, just like Assi, had lost their lives as a result of revenge, with nobody ever being brought to any kind of official justice. Number 4. Reginald Teague-Jones, a mysterious figure in British intelligence during World War II, hinted at a strange disappearance in his memoirs called The Spy Who Disappeared. Born in 1889, he joined the Indian Police and then the Foreign and Political Department eventually becoming an undercover intelligence officer focused on Russia and the Middle East. During World War I, his focus shifted to the Ottoman Empire. By late 1917, with the Russian Revolution, he was sent to Baku to assess the situation and stop German supplies from what is modern-day Turkmenistan, at the time known as Transcaspia. The mission succeeded, and he withdrew to Transcaspia. Around this time, anti-Bolsheviks in Transcaspia captured 26 commissars from Baku. Discussions about what to do with them involved local and British authorities. Teague-Jones claimed his only role was passing messages from Wilfred Malleson, who was apparently against moving them to India for prisoner exchange. Ultimately, local authorities executed all 26. Despite Teague-Jones's denial, authorities blamed him, an accusation echoed by Leon Trotsky, which became Soviet historical fact. Fearing for his life, Teague-Jones vanished in 1922. Around the same time, a new British travel writer, Ronald Sinclair, began publishing work. Sinclair wrote about his travels, producing photos and films claiming wanderlust. He later joined the British consulate in the US and died in 1988. Only after his death was the truth revealed. Ronald Sinclair was actually Reginald Teague-Jones, who'd lived under a new identity for 66 years. His extensive travels and diplomatic work are believed to have been connected to secret intelligence gathering. Number 3. Violette Szabo was the second woman in British history to be awarded the George Cross for her bravery during the Second World War. Sadly, the medal had to be given to her young daughter, as Violette herself had lost her life after being captured by German forces shortly after the D-Day invasion of 1944. Violette was born in France to a French mother and British father. She grew up in England, living an ordinary life as a saleswoman until the outbreak of the Second World War. She joined the Auxiliary Territorial Army, but had to stop after discovering she was pregnant with her daughter. Her daughter Tanya would never meet her father, a soldier who lost his life in North Africa when she was just 3 months old. By this point, Violette had taken up work in a factory, helping to supply the armed forces, but she wanted to do more. She was adventurous and brave, physically fit, and knew how to fire a weapon. She also knew French and English, and it would come as useful on the continent. Violette joined the Special Operations Executive, and she was remembered as a bright and enthusiastic young woman who was able to lift the spirits of other people during training. She wasn't the most capable and had trouble during her parachute training, but managed to pass the program. In April of 1944, Violette began her first mission. She was parachuted into France, where her mission was to gather intelligence about German activities there and to re-establish connections with the French spy network, which had been uncovered by enemy forces. It was extremely dangerous, but she was able to reveal secret information about the fates of those spies and resistance members, including over 100 who'd been captured. There's also some evidence that her information helped to coordinate aerial attacks. After the success of Violette's first mission and the D-Day invasion, she was ready to go again. Unfortunately, this one wouldn't go quite so well. She was parachuted into the area and made contact with another member of the network, Jacques Poirier. They were driving when a German tank division crossed their path, blocking the road. Both Violette and Jacques tried to make their escape, but Violette twisted her ankle and couldn't move fast enough. She insisted that Jacques leave without her. According to one popular account, Violette took herself to a tree, where she was able to provide covering fire for Jacques as he made his escape. Violette was captured, and what exactly happened to her would remain a mystery until after the end of the war. She was taken as a prisoner of war. According to those imprisoned with her, she never lost her fighting spirit. She tried to help French prisoners send messages out of the camps, and on one occasion brought water to dehydrated male soldiers when the train they were being transported on was attacked. She never gave up any of the secrets she'd learned as part of the SOE. She has no known grave, but is commemorated on a memorial in Surrey, England. Number 2. In the early days of the coronavirus pandemic, Chinese authorities restricted information about the new disease, leading to penalization or disappearance of bloggers and doctors who spoke out. One of the first was Dr. Li Wenliang. an ophthalmologist at Central Hospital of Wuhan, the outbreak's epicenter. In December of 2019, patients presented with SARS-like symptoms. Li was sent an internal memo showing a high likelihood of a SARS coronavirus. Fearing a serious outbreak, he shared the document on a private WeChat group with former medical school classmates, warning them of 7 confirmed cases from the Hunan seafood market and urging them to use face masks. Despite his request for secrecy, someone shared the images on social media, making the information go viral and establishing Li as a whistleblower. Within days, local police summoned Li and others, accusing him of spreading false information damaging the public. He was forced to sign a letter vowing not to repeat the action and later shared his experience online. Though authorities denied this information, cases rose, and shortly after his police encounter, Li contracted the coronavirus from a patient, and his symptoms rapidly progressed. By late January, the novel coronavirus was undeniably spreading. Li continued to share his experience battling the disease on social media, becoming a well-known figure who many thanked for the early warnings. On February 7th, Li passed away from the disease. His passing sparked outrage as citizens criticized the government's secrecy, believing earlier action could have saved many, many lives, including Li. Although Li was later cleared of any wrongdoing for sharing the information, for many, the exoneration came far too late. Number 1. Vincent Gargiulo was involved with some dangerous people, but when he tried to tell the authorities all that he knew about these individuals, it cost him his life. His evidence still made its way to the FBI and ultimately helped to put a most wanted criminal behind bars. Gargiulo ran gyms and fitness facilities in New York. He was a longtime friend of Christian Tarantino, another gym owner. The two were at one point business partners, and Gargiulo counted Tarantino among his closest friends. But Tarantino had a dark side. While his legitimate businesses seemed to be successful enough, Tarantino's main income came from robberies. He led a gang of thieves who were so successful their earnings had attracted the attention of John Jr. Gotti. But Tarantino's crimes reached a new level in 1994. He led a gang that held up an armored car in Long Island. While one of the guards was lying on the floor, complying with the thieves, Tarantino's associate, Louis Dorval, took the man's life. The violent act wasn't enough to turn Tarantino away from his life of crime, but he knew he needed to take extra precautions to stop himself from being caught. Dorval insisted he would rather go to prison than tell the authorities anything about his crimes, but when he was being investigated for an unrelated crime, Tarantino began to get paranoid. Just a few months after the armored car robbery, Tarantino took Dorval's life and dumped his body in the Atlantic Ocean. When exactly Gargiulo learned of these crimes is unclear, but it wouldn't be until years later that he decided it was time to speak about it. Why exactly Gargiulo turned on his friend is unclear. One possibility is that it was a response to money troubles Gargiulo was facing at the time. Gargiulo was having problems with his gym and had been in court about the business multiple times, but some have suggested Gargiulo and Tarantino had been arguing beforehand, and Gargiulo wanted proof that he was uninvolved in the criminal activity. Starting sometime around the year 2000, Gargiulo secretly tape-recorded conversations with Tarantino. The criminal discussed the attack on Dorval and the armored truck guard, and whether he believed there was any evidence linking him to the crimes. Gargiulo then sent a letter to Tarantino, demanding money to keep his silence. It wasn't an offer Tarantino was going to take. He enlisted the help of a worker at his gym to take out his one-time friend. Before the hit could be carried out, Gargiulo also contacted the FBI. Law enforcement was already suspicious of Tarantino. The familial DNA had tied him to the armored truck robbery. Gargiulo wrote a letter to law enforcement, asking whether there was a reward for information in the case, or Dorval's case. He told the FBI that he had no involvement in either crime and wasn't looking for a deal, just money. The FBI was able to arrange a brief meeting in which Gargiulo refused to hand over the tapes. He wanted to keep them as assurances that he would get his money. Before any money exchanged hands, Gargiulo was attacked. It was August 18th of 2003. He was on his way to work at a construction site in Manhattan when he was approached by Tarantino's employee. The man opened fire, hitting Gargiulo at point-blank range. He passed away in the hospital. An anonymous source would later send Gargiulo's tapes to the FBI. Tarantino was soon arrested and found guilty for his involvement in taking the lives of the three men, and he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.